We got to talk about the Boston Red Sox. 15 game win streak. Currently hold the second wild card spot in the American League after just a putrid, decrepit start the first 3 months of the season, where it looked like they were inevitably going to sell and essentially do pretty well. Right? It's going to be a seller's market. There's not a lot of teams that are definitively selling, and there's not a lot of teams that even have pieces that are coveted throughout Major League Baseball. And the Red Sox would have had plentiful of them with the Aroldis Chapman. If they decided to get rid of Wilson Contreras, Jaron Duran, although he's having another abominable year with an average below 200, teams bereft of offensive firepower maybe thought they could tweak something with the swing and bring him back to his tantalizing talent, which he seemingly does have. So I'm sure there would have been a team that would have taken a flyer on him, contingent on the price, of course. And then of course Sonny Gray, who every starter, every deadline goes for a decent price. So the Red Sox could have done very well, and they could have, with Roman Anthony coming back next year, they still have Willie Abreu. They still have some decent young players. If they held on to Ranger Suarez, they could have maybe contended next year. But all of a sudden, they decided to play up to their potential. No, played out of their mind. Not only that this is nobody's potential winning every day, they rattled off 15 wins in a row, and all of a sudden found themselves not only in a wild card position, but in the second wild card position at 52 and 50, and completely eradicated the notion of selling. It has been remarkable. I don't think anybody saw this coming. I don't even think the most avid, the most delusional, the most hand-wringing, fist-pumping Red Sox fan could have told you this was coming. Their offense looked completely, and I don't watch every single Red Sox game, but putting it on when I did occasionally, their offense was just completely listless. And it looks like that when you're not scoring runs. It looks like you don't care. It looks listless. It looks just like they don't even care. And of course, that's not the fact. They want to win. This is, even though you're making an obscene amount of money, I would surmise losing every day and just getting booed, especially in a big town in Boston as they were. That's not fun, right? So of course they're trying to, but when you're not hitting, when you're just trancing back to the dugout after another strikeout, after another weak dribbler back to the pitcher, as they were pumping out there just on a daily basis. They had Caleb Durbin hitting third, or not hitting third, but playing third every day. Now, it's mostly because of the Trevor Story injury, but just goes to show you, amplifies how bereft of talent they were on the offensive side of the ball. Wilson Contreras, it was either a 3-run bomb or they were just not putting any rally together whatsoever. They could not string together multiple hits to put together a big inning. They just could not do it. Jaron Duran, like I said again, hitting under 200. Yes, he'll run into the occasional bomb, which has his OPS somewhat palatable, but as a leadoff hitter, they moved him down since, of course, as they should have. But Willie Abreu is hitting third. He is not a third hitter on a playoff contending team. They looked listless. And now, all of a sudden, before the All-Star break, 2.5 weeks ago, it just flipped. And they looked unstoppable. Now, let me give you some numbers during this streak. So, they swept the Angels. Now, that's okay. They were still 6 games under 500 at that point. Sweeping the Angels, okay, it's good, but that's not something that you want to pump your chest about. The Angels are obviously one of the worst teams in the league. The White Sox, okay, all right, you're 6-0. Now the Mets, okay, the Mets are also abominable. Looks like they hate each other, but now we're 9 in a row. I don't care who you beat at that point. I don't even care if those a minor league team. If you're going 9-0 during any stretch of the season, no matter who you're beating, that's impressive. Then the Rays. All right, now the world's on notice. You're 12-0. You just swept the Tampa Bay Rays. Okay. Then they took 2 of 3 from the Orioles. That's a hell of a stretch. And now all of a sudden, they're right there in the thick of it, and they cannot sell. Even though they probably could have done well, they cannot sell. More numbers. 823 team OPS. Now, that listless offense I was alluding to, That is the antithesis of that. That is nowhere near being listless. That is pummeling the baseball. With a 6.3 run per game average, again, the Pirates had the number one spot. The Pirates and the Nationals have had the number one spot for the majority of the season with around 5.5 runs per game. Obviously, 6.3 is much higher than that. That's just put that in context. You're scoring a ton of runs. Obviously, that is not easy to do, especially with on offense that we looked on paper prior to this streak saying they couldn't even score 6 runs in 4 games, let alone average over 6 runs in one game. Runs allowed, 2.9. 22 bombs during the stretch as well. Over a bomb per game. They had Caleb Durbin hit a walk-off grand slam when it looked like they were dead and buried and the streak was finally going to come to an end. They had Wilson Contreras hitting the cover off the ball, over a 350 average, over 1,000 OPS. His numbers for the season are obscene in general as well, with a 297 average and a 952 OPS. Sonny Gray put together 2 great starts. He got rocked yesterday, but the streak was over, so it's immaterial. He has a ERA at 2.78. Ranger Suarez, 3.15. It's a hell of a signing. He's eating up innings, saving that bullpen. He's been a great, great signing. Aroldis Chapman, of course, racked up a bunch of saves during that stretch as well. It's 24 in total for the season. They're not going to win the World Series. They probably, if they might win a series because the American League is not nearly as deep as the National League. I don't think they're as good as the Rays, even though they did just sweep them. I don't think they're as good, of course, as the Yankees, especially if they make a big trade at the deadline. Whether it's a big bat or they plunge and just say, fuck it, let's build the most deadly rotation and trade for Terry Skubal. I honestly don't even think they're better than the Rangers. I know that may be obscene to say. The Rangers have been toiling around mediocrity all season, but if that rotation is healthy with Nate Eovaldi and Jacob deGrom, and if Corey Seager gets back healthy, I know it's a lot of ifs, but I think on paper, the Rangers have some tantalizing talent that definitely supersedes the Red Sox when healthy. They just have yet to put it together. They've relied on Brandon Nimmo to hit cleanup, and that's not optimal. But I don't want to harp on that. The Guardians, we always sleep on the Guardians. We always say that the Guardians don't have it, but I think this year, especially, J-Ram, Jose Ramirez should be back for the playoffs, but that offense is just, talk about listless. That offense, I mean, they're asking a lot of Travis Bazzana, a lot of that. Now looks like he's going to be a phenomenal player, but as a rookie, they're asking a lot of him. He's hitting in the middle of the order or leadoff on a daily basis. Kyle Manzardo is hitting fourth. All right, so I'll give the edge over the Guardians for sure. The White Sox, I think they are too young. That rotation is getting exposed. Davis Martin has not looked even close to the pitcher he was the first 2 months. If Maricama, Colson Montgomery is not hitting the ball out of the yard, or Miguel Vargas, they have no chance of winning. They have to just pummel teams offensively, which they have done for the majority of the year, but that to me is not tenable. That is not sustainable for the majority of the year. So if they lined up in a playoff series, I do think that the Red Sox could take them down. But so I would say unequivocally the Rays and Red Sox are better. Now, the Astros are also on a roll, and Yordan obviously is probably not. I think he is with Aaron. I know with Aaron Judge out, Yordan Alvarez is the best hitter in all of baseball. So obviously that puts an absolute frightened scare in your eyes if you're any team facing him. But I do think the Red Sox are better in totality as a team, especially pitching wise, than the Astros. Hunter Brown has not looked the same since his injury. So but with all that said, with all that prefacing, belaboring, I don't think that they can even. They might win a series, but they're not going to win the pennant. But that's immaterial. This has been incredibly impressive. And now they're going to buy. And now that puts an incredible damper, an incredible wrinkle in this deadline. Because, like I mentioned at the top, this is going to be a seller's market unequivocally. And this was going to be one of the preeminent sellers with multiple guys that teams were coveting. And now all of a sudden, who are going to be the sellers? The Rockies, they have Hunter Goodman. Okay, he's a good catcher. Catchers usually don't get traded at the deadline. The A's, they just lost their catcher, Shea Langoliers. They could trade Jacob Wilson. Okay, is he really moving the needle at shortstop? And he's slap hitting shortstop? Probably not. Are you going to trade Nick Kurtz? No. I mean, it's the A's, so I guess never say never, but he is their cornerstone, or should be. The Angels, probably not going to trade Mike Trout. Reed Detmers, Jose Soriano, okay. Again, that's not necessarily moving the needle, especially after Jose Soriano's torrid first couple months. He has petered off completely the last few starts for sure. This trade deadline may suck, and I think that is the takeaway from this. Obviously, if you're a Red Sox fan, you're enjoying the fuck out of this, as you should. Winning baseball games is always incredibly exhilarating, even if you know you don't have a chance to really punctuate this season with the World Series trophy. But I think that is the takeaway, honestly. Just as a casual, not as a casual, but just as a non-baseball fan, that all of a sudden Chapman's not getting. Now, they could buy. It obviously is going to add another buyer, and they could be extremely aggressive to try and capitalize on this, to try and, all right, we may be having something special within this squad that we need to capitalize on. I don't think, especially with the way front offices are so analytically driven, that I don't think that is, especially we've seen with Craig Breslow, he's solely driven by analytics, even though he's a former player, which is an insane, asinine thing to feel. So they could go out there and all of a sudden trade for Terry Skubal. I don't think that's the case, because actually the rotation is probably their strength. They need a bat, and as I mentioned, there's not a lot of big bats out there unless you want to trade for Hunter Goodman. They do need a catcher. Connor Wong is not the answer, but so that could be a big splash. That could be, but man, you take away Wilson Contreras, Sonny Gray, Aroldis Chapman, who look like locks to be traded. Now all of a sudden they're not going to be traded. There's no chance. It's going to be interesting. Now, they need a shortstop. They need a catcher, as I mentioned, and everybody needs bullpen help. Obviously, they have Chapman, who's a lockdown guy, but before him, it's a little bit shaky. But I don't know about the deadline as a fan. I think that's the takeaway. Obviously, if you're a Red Sox fan, you're enjoying this, and nobody saw this coming. But playoffs could be a little bit more enjoyable with having a behemoth franchise as the Red Sox in the playoffs, and they could seemingly meet up with the Yankees. So that would be a great series. And if the Red Sox do end up in the playoffs, they'd ostensibly still be on a torrid pace. So they'd be playing great baseball, obviously. So that'd be fun series to watch. But man, I think, again, to wrap this video up, I do think that because of the Red Sox going 15-0, the trade deadline is going to be a little bit substandard, which is unfortunate as a baseball fan.